Welcome back everyone, this is Epinhusa57 here. We are back on Neverwinter on the Xbox One, and today I have another build for you. So this build will be for the Oathbound Paladin, and before I get right into it, I'll go ahead and give you a couple little pieces of information about it. First off, I already did a build video for the Paladin, and that build was my Retribution build, which is my go-to build, but this is another build that's kind of just for fun and to help you guys out with farming. It's a PvE build, it is not a glitch, it is something that is actually built into the game, so you're not going to have any problems or anything doing this other than, well, we nicknamed the build Lagadin because, well, if you've seen Lagadins versus Epic Temple of the Spider or Lagadins versus Epic Lair of Lostmouth, you'll find out why. So many of you have asked for this build, and what we're going to start off with, it really doesn't matter with what your race is. Preferably for this, human will be best, but there's several things that you need. Also, this build will only work up until the point that Module 8 or Mod 8, the Underdark, is released, and then this build will be patched, so keep that in mind. Up until then, it's an extremely fun build to use, and you will want to run with a companion out. So before we get into how the build works, we're going to look at what setup you need. Now, your gear is not crucial. It can be just your item level 130 gear, basically as long as you have a level 70 character, and you will need all of your boons from the Dread Ring. The more boons you have, the better. Armor's not going to play a huge part in it, but it will make your character stronger. So moving forward from there, your stats, you're going to want to stack everything you can into Constitution and then Charisma for your action point gain. The initial roll when I built this character was 19 Constitution, 13 Wisdom, and 13 Charisma. So as you can see, that's what I have it boosted up to now, is 28 Constitution and 21 Charisma. Recovery is extremely important for this build because that is your action point gain, similar to a perma bubble, except we can actually regenerate our action points out of combat. Basically, we can do everything except for interact with doors and dungeons. Some of you may see me running around on this build. I'll get to questions at the end of this video. But anyways, recovery is pretty important. Armor pen is pretty important, and power is very important. Critical strike, here nor there. My gear has critical strike on it because this is a gear that I will be using when I switch back to my Retribution build. Anyways, powers. For left trigger, which is your at-will, or one of your at-wills, will be Radiant Strike. We don't use it a whole lot, but it's very helpful to charge into mobs. Your primary at-will, which is right trigger, will be Oath Strike, because with the Oath of Devotion, your healing is improved by 10% for 15 seconds, and you unleash a burst of healing. It's another heal. Basically, this build heals enemies to death. It's pretty insane. Your standard personal will be Aura of Courage and Aura of Life. If you have two Paladins running this build, or two Lagadins, you will both have Aura of Life, which basically revives people from near-death state. So when they're on the ground down, you just walk by them and it revives them. And one person will run Aura of Courage, the other person will run Aura of Wisdom. So you do want to put your points into that. Now, as far as your actual encounter powers, you're not going to really use but 3 specific powers. Bond of Virtue, and that should be on your B button. Vow of Enmity, which should be on your X button. And Relentless Avenger, that will be on your Y button. Then for your dailies, there's 3 of them that we use. Primarily, you will use Shield of Faith. That should be your LB and X. That puts up a 50% damage reduction for you and your teammates, and they receive 20% more healing. For my LB and Y, I use Healing Font because it's a heal that you place on the ground and it lasts for 40 seconds and heals your teammates and it will chain to up to 5 damaged teammates. So basically, everybody, or at least a couple of your teammates and a couple of their companions. Very helpful. However, there is a third daily, one of the first ones that you have access to, Heroism. You can swap this out for Healing Font and keep it as your LB and Y, depending on the situation that you're in, because what it does is it gives you temporary hit points, and for basically a few seconds, 5 seconds at rank 1, 15 seconds at rank 3, gives you immunity to CC, which is your control. So you can't be stunned, you can't be rooted, knocked back, anything like that. Very helpful in certain situations like the Lost Mouth fight or up against golems. But that's the only time that you swap in Heroism. Other than that, I like to keep Healing Font as my LBMY. Now before we do the feats, one of my friends gave me the very basic version of this build. Since then, I actually went and tweaked it to get more damage out of it and kind of made it my own build. If you are human, this is the setup that you will want to go with. If you are Dragonborn, your points are going to be slightly different because you don't have the 3 extra points that human does. But we're going to start off with Heroics. Go 5 of 5 in Divine Action, so that activating your Divine Call regenerates 5% of your max action points. Skip Weapon Mastery, but do put 3 of 3 in Toughness, so your hit points are increased by 9%. Then put 3 of 3 in Wrathful Strikes, so your at-wills are increased by 6%. Take 3 of 3 in Exemplar's Haste, so your encounter powers have a 6% faster recharge rate. Don't put anything into Light Shield, don't put anything into Dominating Presence. Do, however, go and put 3 of 3 into Impassioned Pleas. This increases how fast you regenerate Divine Call energy by 6%, and that's very helpful since Divine Call will give us back our action points. Skip Divine Attunement and skip Force of Will. For the human build, put 1 point into Divine Wisdom, because that will increase your healing that you get from Wisdom, and also then put 5 points into Steadfast so that you have the most HP possible. If you are Dragonborn, you will basically have 3 less points, so you will only put really 1 into Exemplar's Haste, and then you can make up the other 1 point, you know, wherever you want to. But human is definitely the best race for doing this. So save that, and then we'll move into the actual Paragon. You're going to take Bound by Light, 5 of 5, so your control strength is increased by 10%. That's basically making some of our heals last a little bit longer, and the stun from like Relentless Avenger last longer on the enemies. It's actually better than Swift Flash for this specific build. Then take 5 of 5 on Flash of Light, so your encounter powers have a 25% chance to reduce the cooldown of nearby allies by 10%. That's very helpful, especially if you're running with a second Lagadin. Take 5 of 5 in Radiant Champion. That basically, again, is a team boosting skill, allows you to move quicker, get into the fight, as well as reduce your cooldown and your teammates' cooldown. Very important, take 5 of 5 on Echoes of Light. Your at-will powers have a 5% chance to trigger Echo on you. Echo makes the next encounter power instantly recharge all of your encounter powers. Very helpful for getting your action points back. You could swap that down to 4 or 5 if you desperately wanted to, but I don't really think that's a very good idea. Then take 4 of 5 on Purifying Fire. This way your at-wills do even more damage. Extremely helpful since our primary damage comes from the at-wills. Take 1 of 1, of course, on Vengeful Judge. When you activate your Divine Call, which we'll be doing a lot, you proc Judge on yourself, and Judge increases the damage dealt by 35%, as well as reducing the cooldown on your currently recharging powers by 35%. Pretty cool. Now, you have to have Prism. 5 of 5 in Prism. When you activate your daily, you become a Prism for 20 seconds. During this time, anytime you are healed, all allies within 30 feet of you are healed for the same amount. This is getting into how our build works. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, put 1 of 5 into Beacon of Hope. Basically, it's 6 seconds. Again, when you activate your daily, randomly 3 allies within 30 feet of you who have taken damage will be healed for 50% of your weapon damage every 2 seconds. Doesn't seem like much, but it's another heal going out there, and I'll tell you why that helps in a minute. Last 10 points. Go down to the Light Paragon, put 5 of 5 in Gifts of Light so that you heal for 10% more, and 5 of 5 in Light Touched so that your healing spells generate 10% more action points. Go ahead and save that. Now for boons, it doesn't matter if you have all of the boons, so we're going to start with the most important set, which is the Dread Ring set. This is where if you don't have it already, it can be very expensive because you can use up to 55 Genie's Gifts to go ahead and get these boons in one day if you haven't made any progress on the Dread Ring. The first one you're going to take is going to be 250 power and 250 movement speed. The second one, you're going to take 400 regeneration. Doesn't really matter too much. For the third one, you want Forbidden Piercing, which is 3% resistance ignored. For the fourth one, you have to have Shadow Touch. It's when you deal damage, you have a chance to deal up to 20,000 necrotic damage over a few seconds. Have to have that boon. And the very last boon for Dread Ring, you must have Burning Guidance. Your healing spells have a chance to burn enemies near the target for up to 2,000 radiant damage. That damage does seem to be affected by power and possibly by armor pen. I haven't confirmed that because of how often it procs, but it cannot crit, so critical chance on that does not matter. Now, Sharndar boons, up to you. I have a few of them unlocked, so I went with 400 power, 400 critical strike, and then Elven Haste, where you gain 3% more action points, or you gain your action points 3% faster, however you want to look at that. Icewind Dell doesn't have really great boons for this build, but I went with 400 combat advantage bonus, 400 stamina gain, and the 2% crit severity. And Tyranny of Dragons, basically your choice is hit points or power, so for the one that I had, I went with the power. Basically, you're going with all offensive boons at this point. Companions, you do actually want to have a companion out and summoned. While I do have an Ion Stone, I prefer to actually have my Battlefield Medic out, and the reason for that is, as you can see, the Battlefield Medic actually has a health bar. So, now that you know what the build is, the way this build actually works. When you enter a dungeon, what you want to do is you want to press B, which is your Bond of Virtue. Now what that does is it bonds all allies, and that includes your companions, to you. When you heal a bonded ally, all allies are healed for 15% of what that heal was. Then you have your X button, which is Vow of Enmity. Now the thing about Vow of Enmity is it basically links you and everyone else to that target. Anyone who hits that target is healed for a percentage of the damage that they do. That's another heal that goes out. For your Y button, you have Relentless Avenger, which can be used as a damaging attack to hit multiple enemies and send them flying, but you can also charge to teammates, even their companions, and knock enemies away from them. That is actually a healing spell. I will show you, and this is how we get our daily back. So the first thing we do is LB and X. That puts up Shield of Faith, and as you can see, Prism procs, and then I can simply charge into the enemy with Relentless Avenger and tap 2 taunts of Divine Call, and I have my Relentless Avenger back, and I almost have my full action points, and I literally haven't done anything. These are just tiny little mobs here in the Dread Ring, nothing really dangerous or important, and there's only one of this build, but there you go. I have my daily back already and can use it again. If you have the Sigil of the Devoted, you can pop that, and that will give you your action points back again, as well as you can use your Sanctuary Shield to heal you, and you see how Burning Guidance procs and all that damage that's coming off of just me doing this. Now, where this build actually comes into being totally ridiculous damage is when you have two people running this build because of the feedback loop that you create. There's also one other thing before I discuss that feedback loop that I find to be very, very helpful, and that is the Tenebrous Enchantment. Now, you only need one of these enchantments, and I have a regular Tenebrous Enchantment. It does go in the offensive slot, and what it is when you strike a foe, you have a chance to deal 2% of your current hit points in necrotic damage. Now, 2% might not seem like a lot, but 2% of 100,000 hit points, that's a really nice hit there. Now, the internal cooldown on this enchantment is once every 15 seconds, but still, every 15 seconds, that extra hit for, you know, even if you have a lesser, that's only 1%, but you have 100,000 hit points, that's still an extra hit for 10,000. So with this enchantment, that's an extra hit for me for 20,000. And then for a weapon enchantment, I actually recommend that you use a Plague Fire. I have a pure Plague Fire, but if you have a regular or greater, that works too. And then for a armor enchantment, I like to use the Briar Twine so that you reflect damage that you take, or at least a percentage of it, back to the enemy. Now, the way this build does its massive amount of damage when you get two of them in a party together, working together, is through both Prism and Binding Oath, or, well, not Binding Oath, sorry, wrong build, Bond of Virtue. So what happens is every time you have Bond of Virtue up, let's say you have a party of 5 people with you, and this can get pretty confusing, but try and bear with me. If you have a total of 5 people, every time you heal, which a heal can be your Divine Call, putting up Sanctuary, Beacon of Hope when you activate that attack, or just swinging on the last volley of Oath Strike, because there's basically 3 strikes in Oath Strike. On that third one, you send out a burst of healing. It's not a lot, but it is enough that it counts as a heal. Every time you heal an ally, you have a chance to proc Burning Guidance. Every time you do damage, you have a chance for your Shadow Touch to proc, which is 20,000 from that boon, 20,000 necrotic. Plus, you have a chance every 15 seconds for that Tenebrous Enchantment to proc. Now, where the feedback loop comes in is, let's say that I go ahead and I use Divine Call. That by itself, I just healed that one random guy over there for 17,000. So the way that it works is, if we were in combat, I would have sent out that heal for 17,000, and it would heal him. That's 1 proc for Burning Guidance. Now, when that heal comes back, when he's healed, everybody else in the group, because your Bond of Virtue is up, your B button, because that's up, everybody is healed for 15% of what that heal was. I'm going to go ahead and, while I'm explaining it, just queue up for Shores of Torrent and hopefully get a halfway decent team to actually show you this in combat. Or you can check out my other Lagadins versus other dungeons videos if you want to see the build in combat with 2 of us or 3 of us. But it's pretty simple. As you can see, my bond is already up. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a pretty huge feedback loop from every single heal that I do. So I'll go ahead and vow a target. Now, any damage done to that target is a heal. The closer that your allies and their companions stand to you, the more that this feedback loop will occur, and the faster this feedback loop will occur. Basically, your heal, every single heal that you generate, goes through the feedback loop until 15% of whatever that heal was is less than 1. Every time that happens, there's a chance for Burning Guidance, as well as your other damaging boons and enchantments, to proc. That means that with these 5 people total and their companions, I put out a heal for 10,000. That heal for 10,000 heals everybody. That means that Bond of Virtue procs a total of 5 times if people don't have companions out. That means that every member of the team is healed for the initial heal for 10,000, and then 15% of that 10,000 5 times. Now that heal comes back to me while I have Prism active, because I'm a member of the team, and heals me for that 15%, which Prism allows me, anytime that I am healed, all that health to in turn heal every member of my team for the same amount. So that heal goes back out then. That was 15% of the original heal for 10,000, and then heals everybody again 5 times that procs. Now it's only 15% of 15% of the original heal, so it's going to go down pretty quickly. And if you are by yourself, you can actually get killed, especially if you get stunned. If somebody can get to you, the reason why we run Aura of Life is simply so that you can pick everybody else up on your team, but I'll just release there. They pulled the extra mobs, which wasn't really a good idea. This build does work by itself, but you actually are meant to have 2 people with this build, or at the very least teammates that actually know to stand close to you. Another reason why I'm doing this build video. But basically that's how it works, and the feedback loop, while some people will say is infinite, it is actually not infinite, because every heal can be reduced to 15% being less than 1 point for the heal, so basically it registers as 0 and is forfeit. So it does go away. You can't just pop 1 attack and expect it to sit there and never disappear. But like this, we're out of combat, I can go ahead and charge into my teammates, use Divine Call, use Relentless Avenger again, and I have my daily already. So you can get your action points back extremely quickly. The only bad thing is, while in a dungeon with your bond up, you maintain a aggroed state, so you cannot interact with doors. You would have to actually drop your bond, drop your vow, and then you would be able to wait a few seconds and interact with the doors. So sadly, that's the only drawback to it. I'm gonna basically leave you with that. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my Twitch chat, and I'll answer any questions while I finish this skirmish. Alright, now that I have the chat pulled up, anybody who has any questions or just wishes to watch the last part of this skirmish can go ahead and watch and or ask. I do have the chat pulled up. If you are running this build by yourself, it is best to try and stay as close as possible to your teammates. Most of them will not understand what you are actually doing, in the fact that they think when they see a paladin, they think that you're a bubble pally. Most common would be like a perma bubble, or possibly they would think that you're a retribution build. They don't understand that they must stand close to you, and yeah, that can get you in trouble because of the feedback loop and exactly how I explained it. Now, the farther you are away from the paladin, the slower the feedback loop is, to the point that if you are 30 feet out, you will not be healed by most of the heals. So if you're not within 30 feet of the paladin, you're pretty well screwed. Basically, if you see 2 Lagadins or 1 Lagadin in a group with you, try and stay as close as possible to them. That will basically keep you alive and the rest of your team alive, and allow for a very fast completion of almost any dungeon. This build can be used in Temple of the Spider, can be used in any of your epics, any of your T2 dungeons. any of your regular dungeons, not that you would need to do that. It can even be used if you want to go and fight dragons, such as the dragon in Rothay Valley or even the dragon in Whispering Caverns. And I really wish people would not pick up greens. It's the most aggravating thing ever. But basically, yeah, you can use this build anywhere. If you get 2 Lagadins with this build, you will actually almost lag the game out, especially on a boss or any enemy that has a large amount of health. You will literally get 1 frame every several seconds if both Lagadins have their bond up, their vow up, and actually use their daily. So once you know what you're doing with the build and you do a couple runs, get used to your rotation and everything, you'll be surprised at the amount of damage that you can actually do. Now, if you're by yourself, things are a bit more touch and go. You just have to get used to it. And teammates have to get used to it. Now, you will take damage when playing with a Lagadin, which is something that I should mention, but as long as you stand close to the Lagadin, you will be healed almost as fast as you can take damage, and therefore it really doesn't matter unless your character is so squishy that basically if you take 1 hit, you're dead. If you can be one-shotted, you will have problems running with a Lagadin, so you'll probably have to run with another Pally. If you are running with me or anybody that's of high level, please do not pick up greens. They really have no point being picked up in the dungeon. If you want greens, I'll do another video on how to farm greens, which are your level 70 uncommon gear. And I'm not sure why we have one guy way the hell back there. I think he died. So we'll have to wait a minute for him. In the meantime, I haven't had anybody ask any questions, but be more than happy to answer any questions about this build. Also, as far as potions for this build, the only one that really is worthwhile using would be your level 65 Superior Potion of Force, because that grants you power, and the more power you have, the stronger your heals are. The stronger your heals are, the greater number of times it's going to proc through the feedback loop before being reduced to 0. So that does help. You could use a potion of defense if you wanted to, but not much of a point. If you have a coastal snail or the snail mount, that works really well because it's action point gain. You get 25% of your action points back over 10 seconds. If you have the coastal flail snail, that one's even cooler because you can use it in combat. The axe beak is really good, but that's not available yet on Xbox. Hopefully they'll bring it out fairly soon. Other than that, you could use the Giant Strider, but the Giant Strider is just movement speed, which really isn't that important for a Pally for PvE. If you're playing PvP, that's definitely a PvP mount. You can see how fast I'm getting my action points back there, but this team does not realize that they really need to be a lot closer than what they are. Basically, you can see our Scourge Warlock out there and how his health bar is pretty much constantly turning white. And that is due to the fact that he is not standing close enough. If you see where my healer was standing, that's about the boundary line in this game for 30 feet. If you go to there or past that line, you're not going to get half the heals. So you will take damage and you will go down from it. Now, as you can see, the game really isn't lagging. It might lag for you if you have a really bad internet connection with just one Lagadin, but with 2 Lagadins, you will actually get like 1 frame every 3 seconds, or about that. And then when you're done, drop your bond, get rid of the greens that they have up there, and then you can go and interact with the chests. At this point, you can also use Relentless Avenger and your Divine Call to go ahead and get your action points back and get your daily back so that you're all good to go. And that's how you do it. It can be done with pretty much any group. If you have 2 Lagadins, that works best. 3 is okay, but you have to have good internet. If you go to 4 or 5, it's completely ridiculous. Don't even attempt to do that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, make sure you go ahead and leave a comment. Otherwise, smash the like button, send me a message, and remember to subscribe for more content, as well as share the video with your friends.